Welcome to our podcast. I've got a very special guest. I feel like he's my little brother. I mean, he knows so much. He's doing so much. And I'm just excited to have this conversation with him. First, I want to introduce Darrell Bennett Jr. What's going on, sir?
How you doing, Bishop? It's a blessing to be a part of what you're doing.
Man, it's a blessing to see you, and it's a blessing to hear of all that you're doing. Before we get started in our conversation and chop it up, why don't you just share a little bit about what you're doing? I know it's not a little bit, but just share all of what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you, Bishop. We are inspiring and empowering people. And I do think those are two separate things. You know, people are looking now more than ever for inspiration. They're looking for places where they can receive hope, where they can receive encouragement, where they can be reminded of the greatness that's on the inside of them. And so we do speeches, we do seminars, we do virtual sessions to help people to meet themselves again and to get that hope back and that fire back and that fight back. And then we also do a large amount of empowerment. And by empowerment, I'm talking about, Bishop, giving people the tangible tools, resources, so that way they can succeed. So it's one thing to just tell people they're great, but then if they leave and they're excited, but there's no actual transformation that takes place, then nothing has transpired. So we're working with helping people to break the barriers to higher education. We're working to help people to level up in their careers. We're working to help people to monetize the gifts that God has given them, so they don't have to be a slave to an employer or a slave to a job. We're working with people to unlock the repertoire of gifts that are on the inside of them, so that way they can make an impact on the world that's lasting, powerful, and profound.
Wow. So on this podcast, usually what I do is, I chop it up. And let me say this, our guest is very knowledgeable. I've been knowing him most of all of his life, and I'm just so proud.
Yes.
How tall are you now? Because when I met you, you were like 2'1". You know what I'm saying?
Well, I didn't get much taller, Bishop. I'm like 5'9", maybe 5'10" on a good day if I'm wearing shoes that's this thick. You know, with the soles that.
You probably taller.
I was 6 when I met
Wow.
you, Bishop.
And I'm just so godly proud to see all of the great things and all the accomplishments. And I see you online. Where can people find you and your work and your website?
Thank you. So they can find me on darrellbennett.com. That's DarrellBennett. They can also follow us. The company that we created is the B Square Global Group. So you can find us on thebsggroup.com. And that's the tangible tool that we're using for the empowerment. We're in the business of people development that's sort of merging life coaching, mentorship, as well as talent and career development into one space. So they can find us there along with, the social media platforms.
So how'd you get started in what you're doing? I remember the last time we were in contact after I went to New Orleans, and then you just sprouted up. And I think I connected with you once when you were in Harvard.
Yes.
Talk about your experience, because I don't often get guests who have been to Harvard. How did you get to Harvard, and what did you study in Harvard?
Okay, so let me say this. And first, I am not a person for flattery. I say what I mean, and I mean what I say, and I believe that I speak the truth. My journey to go to Harvard started sitting under your word, Bishop, because it was a reminder for me at a young age that I could be whatever God called me to be. And I think that's important for people to understand, because it's easy to see people in their moment of success, but they have to recognize that started as a seed. One plants, one waters, but God gives the increase. But it takes a planting. And so, at an early age, I don't think that I had the same sorts of mental constraints that a lot of other people had, whether it be you're Black, you can't do this, you grew up in Baltimore, that's not achievable for you. So by the time I went to Morehouse College as 17 years old on a full scholarship, and I was applying for Harvard Law School my senior year, I actually thought that I could. That's how crazy I was. I believed that it was right for the picking.
Wow.
So I applied, one, because I believed that if you're going to be the best at anything, you have to be around people that are the best. And so I had the awesome opportunity to be accepted there. I went there for law school. It was a wonderful 3 years. It was a lot of challenge. It was a lot of struggle as well. But it was an opportunity for me to be around people who are world changers, world shakers, people who think differently and who are committed to using their degree to do something spectacular.
So let me ask you this, since we're on this. So did you sense that I'm black and they're white while you were at Harvard? Did you feel, I know at Morehouse you didn't probably, but what was the atmosphere concerning those of hue when you were in Harvard?
Well, I was pleasantly surprised that it was not what I thought it would be. You know, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what, because I had applied to several other law schools, some that were in the South, and it was very clear that I would not be welcome there. So I didn't know what Harvard would be like, but I felt like if it's the #1 school in the country, then you go and you figure it out later. I was pleasantly surprised. I think it is a place that is far more progressive than perhaps people might think. I also think because I went to Morehouse, I had a strong foundation to build on. I wasn't a black man trying to be a white man. I was authentically me.
Isn't
So,
that a contrast though?
it is.
Isn't that a contrast?
It is.
How do you make the adjustment? You leave Morehouse, which is known for building black, strong men, black,
Yes.
and then you go to an extreme where for many of us on the outside is a school that, just since we're chopping it up, it's a
Uh-huh.
school that discriminates. It's a school that uh, um, doesn't accept people of hue. They make it harder to get in, whether that was the reality or not. How did you make, or did you have to make a contrast? That's what, did you have to make a change? Did you have to change anything from school to school?
Well, I did, but I don't think it was as much about, the cultures are actually very similar in the sense that there is this focus on being great. So that I loved. If there was Kool-Aid to be drunk at Harvard, there was a lot of it to be drunk at Morehouse too. We believed that we were going to come out of Morehouse and shake the world. So I think that there was the commonality there. I think that though, and I've said this before, Morehouse is historically black, Harvard is historically white, no question about that. I think that there is something to be said about the fact that Morehouse doesn't teach you to be black. It teaches black men to be themselves and to be authentic. And that's a difference, to be authentic. So when I walked into a space where maybe I didn't look like many other people, I still felt authentically me. Now of course, there were things that would remind a person that you're out of your element.
Right.
I remember one guy, so there were sections of 80 of us at the law school. And in my section of 80, there was only one other black guy because there were very few black men there. There were several black women, but very few black men. So I think out of the 80, there were 8 in that section that were black women, but only one other guy was a black man. And so, I remember one guy comes up to me afterwards. This is a white guy, and he says to me, "I love the way you talk. You're so articulate and you're smart and you get your point across and you talk so black." And I looked at him, I kind of made it a little bit of a joke because I looked at him and wiped the smile all over my face. I said, "What do you mean I talk black? What does that mean?" He said, "Well, no, I didn't mean it like that." "No, that's what you said. So tell me what that means. What does talking black mean?" So as we talked more, and he realized that I wasn't offended by this statement because really that was his way of saying we talk in rhythm, and it is true. We talk with a swagger, and that is true, So I had to learn to be more authentic, but it was a wonderful experience.
So if you had to compare, if you had to compare your experiences now, I went to Howard for a season. I loved it. I loved everything about it.
Yes.
I love the people. I loved it. It's pushing you towards greatness. I love the history. I love those who came through Howard, Drew, Dr. I love the campus life.
That's right.
Did you have that kind? If I could do it again, I didn't have that many bills back then. If I could do it again, I would do it again. What did you love your forget the academic part. How did you love your campus life at Morehouse versus Harvard, or Harvard versus Morehouse?
That's not a fair question, Bishop, because nowhere in the world is like Morehouse. Nowhere. I mean, it's just the truth. And so to compare them is completely unfair. It is no other place in the world where Black men are educated, are taught to be themselves, to be authentic, like Morehouse. It is not just a Black space, as it were. It's for Black men. That doesn't happen anywhere. For one, there's only 4 all-male colleges in the country right now, and one of them is Black. So historically Black. I want to, we accept anybody, but so the sense of community that I had there, the sense of being built up, the sense of learning who I was, the sense of learning about, history that I hadn't learned about, and knowledge that I hadn't been taught. You can't compare it. That's not fair.
Oh, I didn't know. I didn't know whether you assimilated into, no, seriously. I didn't know whether you had assimilated, because you, how can I say this? You can, if you want to, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
You have that gifting.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know if you assimilated into the Harvard atmosphere like you did naturally Morehouse. Because some people, to survive now, some people, when they go into an adverse culture to survive, they become the culture. And I don't think that's a put down. I think that's just,
I get it,
a reality. So did you simulate into the Harvard?
I don't think well, for one, I don't think it was an adverse culture. I think it was different. And I do think there's a distinction there. It was certainly a different culture than I was used to. But to be fair, Morehouse was. Because, I've had people to say, kind of stepping back a bit, people say, well, I don't go to an all-Black school because I grew up in a city that was mostly Black. You ain't grow up in a place that was like Morehouse. Just because your city, and since we're talking real, might cater to many of the stereotypes, you know what I mean? And of what Blackness may or may not be, does not mean you've been in a place where Black excellence is taught, bred, trained, and developed. Totally different. So Morehouse was a different culture.
What do you guys have this saying? I've heard it from my friends several times. You can't tell a Morehouse. What is that saying?
You can tell a Morehouse man, but you can't tell him much. That's the truth. We don't walk, we saunter, okay? It is the truth. Because when you've had that level, and I'm gonna tell you something, Bishop. When we would, at the law school I'm talking about, would have these meetings or gatherings, particularly amongst the Black students, most of the Black students went to your Yales, your Georgetowns, your Cornells, your Penn. Some of them had gone to Harvard undergrad. And many of them would say, it was a jealousy is a strong word, but it was a sense of envy that those of us that went to HBCUs had the level of pride that we had. Because it's hard to have pride in something that you don't own. I was a part of Harvard. I loved Harvard. It was a great part of my experience, a part of my past, present, and future, but I owned Morehouse. There's a difference.
Got it. I got it.
Difference.
That
was me. That was authentically me.
I got it. That's the way I felt about Howard. I got it. Mm-hmm. That's why it broke our heart when they closed down the Howard Hotel. There were so many memories. Now, I'm not trying to say what kind of memories, but it was those landmarks, right? Drew Hall. It was known as no freshman. I didn't even want to stay in Drew Hall. It didn't have air conditioner. I mean, so that's what Drew Hall was. No, Spelman Hall, where the female stayed, climbing over the fence. I mean, there's so many in our institutions. There's so many memorable moment. I remember when they built the undergrad library, and we got to go in there for the first. So, and I do understand what you're talking about, Morehouse, because there's just something about owning. Now, and again, we just chopping it up, just flowing. When you went to Harvard, from what, and again, I can relate to Morehouse, kind of Howard, but a little different. So, but Harvard, no clue. So other than what I've heard, other than what I've read, other than what I've seen. So were you taught that, or were you indoctrinated? Because that's the word I want to use for Harvard.
Okay.
Were you guys, females, conditioned to feel like you would run the world, be in high places, be in, which many of them have,
Oh, yes.
organizations that we won't go into.
Yes.
And there seems to be, I'll be honest, a camaraderie with that. Let's be honest. There seems to be, when you watch and when you study and when you read certain, like, check this out. I'll give you a good example. And I don't talk about it much, but for a while, I was a Mason for a while.
Oh,
And
wow.
one of the things that I loved about it is, as much as the things that I pretty much, kind of didn't, it was the camaraderie. It was knowing that I had brothers in, I mean, come on, let's talk about the human ego for a minute. It was knowing that I had brothers in every arena, whether you went to court, whether you went to, I'm just saying, went to prison, whether you went to school, whether you needed entry into this. There was a sense, and I have to be honest about it, and with all that people knock, and I'm just being transparent, that was something that I hated, or not hate, that's a strong word, but if there's a part of me that says, I don't ever want to let this go, that was, and actually, I'm going to share something that I've never shared. So long story short, how I was convicted that I need to move on with my life into something else, right? So when I went to my superiors, they had plans for me. I was told, we're never gonna let you go. And I'm like, will I sleep with the fishes? Is that what y'all talking about? Will I sleep? Like
What does that mean?
Am I about to sleep with the fish? No, but she said, so I said, because just to be open, I was moving in ministry then. I was moving in another direction. My focus had to be on ministry and not on that, because you have to be committed to certain things. And so I was moving into ministry. And when I went to do it right, because I've always believed in doing things right, I got elevated in a short amount of time, and they had plans for me. That's not a brag. That's not just kind of segueing into the conversation.
I believe it.
But one of the things, when I was led to go in another direction, I hesitated because I knew I had to do it, right? But the camaraderie.
Yeah, I got it.
You go to court, there were certain things you did that you had a brother. You go to this place, you had, was that kind of the feel you had when you were in, because that's the image I get just looking afar.
I think it's some of that. I think one of the differences is just by sheer numbers. Of course, there's far more Masons, so you're going to have a wider network, but it is that same sense that people in positions of power once sat here, came here, or trying to get here in some way or another. I can remember times, like, for instance, one time one of our professors comes into class and says, I've really thought about teaching this lesson, but I didn't really know how to do it best. So I figured I'd bring somebody in to teach this lesson on. It was a legal opinion. And the Supreme Court justice just kind of comes walking in. Wow. And this is a Supreme Court justice, I will say, God bless, rest in peace. It was Justice Scalia, whose we had read, and, some of the black students, it was more like, if we see him, we would say this, this, and this. Standing right in front of you, between Tom Cruise and Alec Baldwin and just movie stars who might just be in the hallway walking around. They're not necessarily a part of the network, but they're a part of this thing. So yes, but I do think, Bishop, that's what connects it in some ways to Morehouse, in the sense that it's that same thing. Now, there aren't presidents thus far that have come from Morehouse, so that same level, but it is that sense of, hey, we went to Morehouse together, so there's a connection.
Martin King, didn't Martin Luther King?
Oh yes, Dr. Martin King.
There's some other, but there are some
Of
very famous
course.
people like Howard Thurgood Marshall went to Howard. I mean,
Yes.
so you come from, as they say, good stock all the way around, whether it's Harvard, whether it's your mom, your
Yes.
family.
Yes.
And on this, we got to give a shout out to your mother, who is just
Yes.
means the world to me. And
That Bishop.
for years and years, Wanda Clark has just been so dedicated as a believer and all that she's doing. So she's watching this. We love you. We thank God for
Love
what
you,
you're doing.
Mama. I would not be who I was if it was the most important thing my mother ever did to me for me is introduce me to Jesus.
Amen.
Not to church. I think that was important as well because I do think there's a difference, and they aren't
Right.
necessarily
Absolutely.
opposing because you can know Jesus and not know church. You can definitely know church and not know Jesus. That's a whole nother thing. But I appreciated that at an early age. What did David write in Psalms? I think it was 22. From my mother's womb, and
Yes.
my God, you made me trust in you from my mother's breast.
Absolutely. And she's not only walked a walk, from what I've known, she's talked the talk. She's not only talked the talk, but she's definitely have walked the walk and been bold
Yes.
about her faith. If you know your mom, what you do, she ain't quiet at it. If you're looking at this one, she's bold about and strong about what she believes. So you came from good stock, starting with your mom, and then going to Morehouse, and then you went to Harvard. What law were you studying? A particular law?
I was taking class. There's no majors in law school. You just get a general law degree. But I was at that moment focusing more on international law. And I've
Okay.
always had my head in international and what that would look like. Essentially, there is no international law because it's just war if things don't work out. But, I didn't know that at the time.
And so you currently transitioned from Harvard, which is up north. Did you go right to where you are now, or did you come back to Baltimore, the DMV area? How did
No,
that?
never came back to the DMV. I left Harvard on a Thursday. I graduated. Believe it or not, Bishop, today is the 10-year anniversary that I graduated. I graduated May 27th, 2010.
Really?
Yes.
Congratulations. Does it seem that long? It doesn't seem that long.
It seems like yesterday and a lifetime ago.
Okay.
Because I'll share some of that a little bit later. I went through and I have my newest book is called Come Back Swinging. And I talk about some of the dark places that I've been to in life. Some of the poor choices that I made. I talk about losing everything. I mean, there was a period I lost everything that you can imagine a person can lose, and happened to rebuild my life, happened to find out, who I was again. And I have to say, when you lose who you are, when you lose positions, possessions, reputation, your freedom even, intellect won't take you but so far. And religion won't do it either. You have to have a grounded, strong relationship with the Lord. And that's why I say me sitting under that level of word, sitting under you first till the age of from 6 till the time I was about 13 years old, sitting under Bishop Banks from the time I was 13 to, so you saw that
Yes,
I did
yes.
with Banks. So I've been blessed because I've been sitting under the word for a long period in my life. When the Bible calls it an incorruptible seed, Bishop, I know it because when I was in some dark places in life, I had to pull on that.
Wow.
And that's why I inspire people, because I've been through it.
One of the things that I have learned in my own journeys over the since 2000, my life has been kind of like that, beginning in 2000. Though we don't see it at the moment, what I'm learning and what I'm discovering is our journey makes us who we are. I always said like this, to have authenticity in what you say, you've had to have experienced it. It's not just enough. In other words, I'm gonna throw a passage out. Hebrews 4 says, we have not a high priest who cannot be touched with the feeling of our infirmities, but was in all points tempted as we are. Yet he did not let that temptation overwhelm him. So for him to be who he is, he had to feel what we feel. That's called authenticity. And
Yes.
my concern is today, whether it's business, whether it's political, especially in political, because when you have people in powers of position and they don't feel what people go through, then they make decisions that are adverse. And we could get into that at another, but I think to be authentic, because I'm about authenticity. I think that people want authenticity. You don't have to necessarily have gone through what I've gone through, but I need you to have a sense of what I've gone through. And sometimes I don't have a sense of what you have gone through because I'm far removed from it. So when I speak to you, it's just words. But when I have had that journey, so I wanted to share with you on that note, those dark places empowered you to be who you are today, and empowered you to have the platform today. So when you tell people you can come back swinging, I'm not just writing a book. Matter of fact, we got to get you on Wake Up, which is our radio show, maybe in 2 weeks to talk about that book, because I saw that and I'm like, okay, yes, a lot of people need that, especially now. A lot of people have lost everything. A lot of people down to nothing. A lot of people had to change the direction of their career. There's a lot we could talk about. A lot of people had to change what they were majoring in, because that's, even, and I'm not, I know you're busy. The education system has to change, because what was relevant educational 3 months ago, we're going into a whole new era of business, a whole new era of finances, a whole new era of, so, a lot of people are like, okay, I'm starting, maybe not materially, in some materially, starting from the ground up. What do I do? That's where you come in.
You're absolutely right. You said so many things. I mean, first of all, when you talk about being authentic, I believe that God is calling us to be, we have to have discretion in what we share and in how
Sure.
but to have authenticity. I think part of the reason why people feel an aversion to religion as it was is because what happens is we get cleaned up and we act like we were never in the same stuff. We act as if being saved was a one-time act rather than being transformed by the renewing of your mind. You still jacked up in certain areas. You still have stuff that you got to crawl before God and say, why am I dealing with this? And why am I having these feelings and these emotions? And so I think that we have, when you talk about, because really what you're talking about is your power being in your pain. Nobody wants to go through the pain. But that's the place at which you really tap into that human aspect of who you were. And when I talk to people about, the high points, they may celebrate it, but they can't relate. But when I talk about the low points, which is why I wrote Come Back Swinging, everybody can relate to the low points. You may have never stepped foot in Harvard. You know what it's like to lose everything. You may have never been to a Morehouse. You know what it's like to look at your life and feel like, how did it get to this place? Whether it's relationally, whether it's with your health, whether it's some sort of estrangement with your children, you poured everything into them, and then you look up and you say, how did you not like me? And so I think that we are at a place now that we have to come to authenticity. That's the beauty of social media. There's a lot of ugly stuff with it, but the beauty is that people don't want just the Sunday sermon. They want to know that, wait a minute, are you relatable? And if I could, and I don't want to go too far into this, I think what we have a tendency to do is we have a tendency to look at even people in the scriptures And because we use a word we use in history as historians, we heroify people. So what
Yes.
we do is we take their flaws and we dumb it down so much, and we make their accomplishments so great such that we don't even see ourselves in them. We don't see ourselves in an Abraham. We can't really see ourselves in a Moses. We can't see ourselves in a Paul because we've made them something that they were not, rather than they were humans trying to figure it out.
Absolutely. Wow. Listen, you put it, excuse me. That's the beauty of the script, is that humans like you and I, Paul included, because I know he's everybody's second Messiah, but you and I were put in a script so that we could know. I mean, everybody God used. Moses had a limp. Abraham lied. Isaac, his son, lied. That was a generational lie about the wife. I mean, if you go on down, pottage was stolen. Jacob and go to the disciples. Peter was a thug. I mean, if you go right on down, and that's the beauty of God. This is what I love about grace and his anointing, is that God knows what we are and going to be when he calls us. Nothing takes him by surprise. Nothing takes him by surprise. When he called me to this office, he knew all the faults, all the flaws, all the failure. So that's why I don't get off on what somebody is. God knew that. God knew that. When somebody messes up, God knew we would go. So what? Okay, so what you saying that everybody but you don't know? Now get this. I'm not saying lower the effort bar, but I'm saying we've got to lower the humanity bar when it comes to our leaders.
Yes.
That, yes, I'm doing the best I can, and still, this is the limp I have.
Yes.
You understand? But it doesn't make me here's the key, less of who God called me to be.
Come on.
Because he called me with a limp in mind.
And he's still, and you know what, Bishop, if I can go further with that.
Go ahead.
The scripture says that the word became flesh and dwelt amongst man. Christ was fully man and fully God. Divinity and humanity existed in the same space. Now, he did not sin, but divinity and humanity existed in the same space. And I wonder if that's a picture of all of us. Divinity and humanity in the same space. And we have this thinking that because humanity rose up, the divinity is no longer there. And when you look through the scriptures, you found that not only that in each of them in their divinity was humanity there, but God used the humanity where sin abounded, grace much more. He used Paul's past. He used the fact that Paul was, you would have to imagine that to the end of Paul's life, wrote third of the New Testament. And yes, peered into the third heaven. To the end of his life, he would have had regrets and even a level of shame about being a part of the brutal mutilation and torment of early Christians. For his whole life, he would have dealt with that. But I think that insecurity, if you will, God used to push him, because I think that's why we're so zealous about the ministry. That's why we're so zealous to go to all the places and preach the gospel, not to so-called right or wrong, but because he knew I ain't right on my own.
Absolutely.
And I think that's why he even was so clear to being transformed by the renewing of your mind. I was telling somebody the other day, here goes Abraham, a friend of God. The first that we're told is a friend of God. He's the father of faith. And the first man that's called a prophet, right? Abraham, the patriarch. And Abraham, beyond just lie, I don't want to mess with anybody's theology. He would be what we would call today an absentee father. If I told you that somebody I knew told their 13-year-old to pack the heck up and go down the street and never come back again, you would have a problem. And even if you didn't, you certainly wouldn't go to his church. And here this was a man that God said still is my friend. It didn't make it right.
Man, you done started something. You done started something when you talk about the theology, messing up the theology. And he was the father of faith, but he was also a doubter. He doubted at first.
Come on.
We don't talk about that.
We
See,
don't.
and I got a thing about that. You can't. Whole truth is poisonous. Let's unravel it, and we're gonna do. I'm gonna talk to you about us doing this because I think sometimes it's time for our theology to get messed up and see things for what it is.
Yes.
And Abraham rejected his son that he had by Hagar.
Ishmael.
Ishmael didn't pay child support.
No, he didn't.
And he didn't, and it was God. It was God. And see, now I get into something. So, and I tackled this several years ago. Why do we always give Isaac the only credit? Now we're getting into theology a little bit, but being the promised child. He may have been the one. Okay, so where do we see God said, I'll bless your loins? Did not Ishmael come out of his loins? So why are we surprised that there's a war going on over some land?
So you got to back up off that because, see, when you start talking about that, because I'll tell you why. People want to use the scripture to justify their own racial supremacy theories. So it makes sense and it feels good to say it was only Isaac, and let's take it further, it was only Jacob, because Esau, it was only Jacob that got the promise. But when you start to talk about that God blessed Esau too, he didn't get the birthright, but he was blessed. And you talk about Ishmael and the princes that came out of him, now that means, wait a minute, maybe we are equal before God in a way that I don't want to really address.
Maybe, I'm going to push it further. Maybe it's that this whole thing we call Christianity is let me see. Maybe we got to look at the geographical location that this was birthed in and decide that this is more Eastern than it is Western. I'm going to leave it. This is a Eastern faith and not what we've made it a Western faith, that Ishmael was the son, the legitimate son. Now, whether it was the promised son, I'm not going to go into all of that. It came out of whether it was a mistake. So are we saying that God throws away, if we call it mistake, that was because this is what I've heard it preached. That was a mistake. That Isaac, you've heard people say, don't give birth to an Ishmael. So wait a minute. I got issue with that. I got issue.
But you know why that is, Bishop, too? And sometimes it's coming out of a good heart. We have a tendency to make the scripture flat and one-toned. When you start to look at the different tones, I think it makes people uncomfortable. It's easy to look at the world in terms of good guys and bad guys. It's just easier. It's easier for theology's sake. It's easier for our own conscience to sleep. We don't like to think of, again, that humanity and divinity being in one space. We don't like to think of people as being multi-layered. So that's why we say things like, David, he slept with Bathsheba, but other than that, he didn't really do anything. We don't even touch the fact that there was incest going on in his own house that he never even talked about. You go to jail for that sort of thing now. But we don't, it's hard for us to square this sort of circle, because if God calls him a man after my own heart, if God called Abraham my friend, is he condoning is he condoning all of these actions? And so I think it makes us question not just the scriptures, but the way we see the world. So let's bring it to 2020. So when we hear about scandal, when we hear about people falling from grace, when we hear about private transgressions, it's easy for us to look and say, oh, they lost God, they backslid, that's why they did it, or they never knew God. But it is hard for us to say, wait a minute, maybe not only did they know God, now God didn't make them do the wrong things. We know God doesn't do that, but maybe even God in his perfect plan is going to use it. Oh, no. We don't want to touch that.
Darrell Bennett, let me ask you this. Let's deal with fall from grace. Okay, now there's either we schizophrenic, because that is a saying. It's a movie, Fall from Grace.
Mm-hmm.
But in a song, we sing Amazing Grace.
Come on.
In a song we sing The Blood Reaches to the. So which one? I can't do this duality when it comes to belief. So how do I fall from something? I'm not saying you, but when we throw that out there, there's a very famous movie that I've taken issue with the titles, and when people say that, if according to Ephesians, I'm saved by faith, by grace, I'm saved by grace. I'm saved by grace through faith. It is the gift.
It's the gift.
It's the gift of God.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I'm saved by grace. So does that grace, if there's a fall, only extend to a certain dimension in a certain it doesn't extend into the crack house? Are you telling me it doesn't go on the pole? I just want to know, because to fall from it means it has its barriers, in my opinion, in its limitation.
Oh, absolutely. You know what, Bishop? It does extend to, and if I could bring it out further, we always like to think of God as seeing our imperfections and covering us with his grace, no matter what it was, whether it was the crack house, as you mentioned, the pole, whatever, some other insidious thing. But when we look at other people, Dr. King called it the drum major syndrome. It's where we always try to find something in ourselves to give us a little bit of credence above the next person. And I think that creeps into the church because it's human nature. So I think that we say those things, it reaches to the highest mountain in the blood, and, you can't, and I've heard people, I've been in churches where, particularly once I went to college and afterwards, so I was looking for church homes, they would preach but when you would start talking about stuff, and God forbid the pastor had some of these issues. Oh, no. We can't deal with that. And so I think that's one of the reasons why, one, there are some people who've taken issue with Christianity because we've appeared fake. And you are fake if you try to suggest or intimate that you really don't have issues, or if you have issues, they're like small ones. And I do think, I don't think everybody's living a double life. I don't even think most people are. But everybody has that sin which would so easily beset them. I don't care how much you talk in tongues. All of it. And for you to not mention it, that sin would be pride. Let's put it that way. If you don't think that you have it, you're dealing with that. And so I think once we get real, and I think that's the reason why some of our young people, I'm talking about your Generation Z, your 25 and younger, have been pulled away from church, not necessarily Christ, but church, because you look and you say, this ain't real.
They know fake. They know fake.
There you go.
And that's that word again, authenticity. They know when you're not authentic.
Yes.
That's the bottom line. Like, you know, a fake $2 bill or a fake $4 bill, they know it, and you're right. And that's part of the problem, not Jesus. It's the lack of authenticity in who you are, who you represent, what you say you live versus what you live. And again, I understand the discretion thing, but I understand too the issue of there has to be a degree of transparency, of vulnerability. You can't be, anyway. Listen, our time is just about up, man. You're talking about chopping it up. We got to do this. Maybe we can fit it in our schedule to do this once a week, maybe, and just.
I would love that.
I would love it because I love your your energy, your thought patterns, your let me bring some clarity to that. I love that, and we share, and I appreciate that. And once things get back open, man, when you come down, how often do you come to DMV? We got to get you to Living Word. Do you come to DMV
I
often?
would love to. I actually have not been since 2013. So I
Really?
definitely, yes.
Yeah, we gotta come. I mean, and you feel so many shoes. Motivator, speaking of youth, speaking of people who want to go to college. I mean, technology. We could just keep you a whole weekend and have like 8 topics, and you cover.
No, but God is good, Bishop. Thank you, Bishop, for having me. And, for anybody that's listening or watch this, I think the purpose of our discussion is to remind you that when you read the scriptures, you're reading about yourself. No matter
Absolutely.
who they may seem to be, they all struggled in some way. And God used them, and God will use you too. I'm a
And,
living witness of that.
and in the words of Whitney Phipps years ago, ordinary people. God just uses plain old
I love that.
ordinary people.
I thought that was
Um,
John Legend, Bishop. that's
no, but there is a song.
that's ordinary people. That's John
There
Legend.
is a song by Whitney Phipps. Ordinary people. This was maybe
Oh, that's
it.
not my generation, Bishop. Mine is John
No,
Legend.
now, I know John Legend jazzed it up. I know John
I thought
Legend.
he created it.
No, but he did it. It was a gospel piece. Whitney did. Um, um, it may have been about 25 years ago.
Wow.
Was a piece where he just said God uses ordinary people, people like you and me. So John and Whitney was incarnate through John Legend.
Got you.
There was an incarnation that took place. But you're right. It's just being ordinary and not extraordinary. We don't have to try to be what we are. We don't have to trump something up. I always believe if you're graced and anointed to be it, that's just who you are. You're Darrell Bennett, the leader, the motivator, the scholar. You don't have to try to be Darrell Bennett. That's who you are.
Mm-hmm.
In your best, you're Darrell Bennett, all of those things. At your worst, in my best, I'm Darnell Johnson. At my worst. So that's what I love about God. He doesn't do like people do. He doesn't take what he gave you till you learn to act right.
That's right. Because if that were the case, we'd all be in a lot of trouble.
Yes, sir. Well, listen, thank you for sharing this, and thank you for taking the leadership in this. We're going to post this on our Spreaker page, and I'll give you all the information. I'm going to share this on my media platform, and I'm sure a lot of I mentioned to our church, matter of fact, I was on another Zoom, and I said, I got to get ready for another Zoom. I'm so proud of what you're doing, man. Don't stop. And I mean that. I don't just say words. You know me for years. I'm going to get you in Baltimore, and I think you have something to say.